by the library. Greg?
Thank you so much. City Council members, I'm Greg Hyde, the Director of the Library, and I would like to briefly introduce, we have 3 Board of Trustee members here. We have Julie Thorson, who's the President of the Library Board of Trustees. We have Jason Grinstead, who is the Vice President of the Board of Trustees. And then we have past Secretary Ellen Hubble, who is a member of the Library Board of Trustees. Unfortunately, Jennifer Fear and Kevin Tekow, our 2 other members, couldn't make it this morning. During the last 8 months, we have been in concert with the Ivy Group, a nationally recognized group for strategic planning from Philadelphia, and with the local SPPG group to plan out the strategic future of the public library and the master facility plan. Through these 8 months, we have conducted surveys, focus groups, telephone people. We've had interviews with members of this council as well as stakeholders within the city. And we've studied and we visited different portions of demographics of the city. And the results is a strategic plan and a facilities master plan, which was sent to you a little bit more than a week ago for you to first review. This morning, I would like to introduce the plan to you and briefly touch on several initiatives of the strategies that came out of this plan. The consultants first, upon their review of the library system, found that the library was a very high-performing library compared to other libraries benchmarked throughout the United States. We are respected and valued by the residents of the Des Moines area, and we're led by an experienced, talented administration of managers. We're staffed by dedicated professionals whose #1 goal is to give excellent service to the citizens of Des Moines. The staff works well together, and the staff is committed to improving library service and not standing still, but continuing to improve how we can help the citizens of Des Moines. We excel at event programming. We rank very high compared to other libraries in patron visits and virtual visits, and we offer a solid, balanced collection that has been purchased with low expenditures very frugally. We are supported by a very dedicated library board, and we're enhanced by a very successful foundation, as you've seen with the previous capital improvement plan. And we have forged very productive working relations with different departments within the city, as well as other agencies within the Des Moines area. So let me take you through the 12 strategic priorities that came up from the consultants and have been recommended to the Library Board of Trustees. 4 of the strategic initiatives are of more importance than the others: branding and marketing, community affairs and partnerships, to be current with technology, fundraising and funding. So I'll briefly touch upon each of these and show you some initiatives. With branding and marketing, it was found that the consultants believe that we need to excel and further enhance our marketing to the citizens within the Des Moines area by developing a very solid marketing plan and outreach plan and promoting the services and resources of the public library. A lot of people knew what we were about, but there were some services that they kind of assumed that we provided to the public. We need to be out there with a marketing plan so that they know very well what services we offer and what resources they have for them. And then once we've done that, to standardize our brand throughout all the libraries, so a person from the north side is able to find the same services on the south side, the east side, the same services on the west side. With community fairs, the second in the 4 most important strategies, we need to find desirable partners whose missions are aligned with the priorities of the Des Moines Public Library. In doing so, we will be finding a synergy and develop a synergy between those partners and the library to enhance our services to the public and provide better services. We also need to forge the productive partnerships with these community businesses, service agencies, and governmental agencies, but we need to be smart about this. We need to come up with written agreements and roles and an exit plan, because some partnerships are limited in term. The third is to stay current with technology, and this is very important. We have a citizenry out there that has become very adept with technology, very forward with their technological prowessness. The library needs to keep up with this. We cannot afford to have computers that are still on operating Windows 95 when the rest of the citizens of the Des Moines area are operating on Windows 8. We also need to continue to develop the virtual library, and the consultants found that this was very important and very desirable and have used it as an example throughout the United States. Come November, you will see our rollout of what's more than just a website that you can go to. We're going to produce an interactive site where a person can download ebooks, download magazines, download audiobooks. They can have two-way real-time interaction with a remote librarian to talk to them over Skype. So from your armchair at home, you'll be able to ask your questions and receive the answers via the website. Conversely, if you have a sick child at home, you'll have a site that you can have the child look at, which will have prepared story times and other programs for that child in a safe and educational environment. The fourth, and one of the top 4 very important strategies, is fundraising and funding. The consultants found that we need to enhance our process of securing major corporate, foundation, and individual gifts. We also, the consultants said, we need to establish partnerships with other development offices. Not only will our foundation be working for the library, but the foundation will partner with other foundations, such as the idea that is being floated upon the city of having your own foundation and development office. Our foundation will work in concert with you. We also need to explore new alternative sources of operational funding. And in that, what we need to explore, the consultants felt, was things such as charging and developing our meeting rooms at the Central Library as a mini conference center and to charge for that services. Additionally, look to the city, look to the county, look to the state. There are contracts out there that have already been affected by these different parties that we need to piggyback on so we have a savings of funding ourselves. And also to look at such objects as the library levy as a potential source of future funding. The other 8 strategies that the consultants floated before the library board were things such as quality customer service. This is one of the things that the consultants really strove for us to continue. We have and we effect good customer service with the citizens of the Des Moines area, but we cannot let that just ride. We have to continue to improve it. And one of the things that the consultants told us that we need to start employing and embracing is more of a use of demographic information to build relevant decisions upon. And we are now engaging different sources that we can do that. Educational support is something that the library needs to assist with in the Des Moines area. We need to position the library to support educators for the 21st century literacies. Things like 3rd grade reading initiative is very important. Studies have found that if a child is not reading comprehensively or beginning to read comprehensively by their 3rd grade, they will lose the opportunities and advantages later in their education and later in life to educate themselves and to gain information. The library is a partner in this with the schools, and we, the consultants, felt need to step forward and assist the school system with this. We need to research the best practice and models for school and library cooperation, not only for the public schools, but also for the other educational institutions that are in town, such as the colleges, all the way down to the Lutheran services that teach English as a second language. We can step up and be a partner with them to provide education to citizens or future citizens of the area. Another strategy is to support the economic development of the Des Moines area. We need to first explore the regional opportunities to collaborate with different agencies in the public sector and private sector, but also, particularly, we need to effect more cooperation with libraries in the Polk County area. And we can start with very simple things such as your summer reading programs. Each one of the 13 libraries in Polk County goes to a talent to come to perform at the library in the summer for summer reading. To engage that talent will be about $450, and you have to schedule that. Well, why don't all of us libraries get together and cooperate with each other to go to the talent and say, we'll give you work for 2 months, here are the dates, and we can drop that fee from $450 per event down to probably $300 an event. There's cooperation that gives economic advantage. That's just one of many things. We can go to purchasing the reference sources, to even sharing in the ILS system, which is a fancy word for the checkout and cataloging systems that we each have in each of our library systems. But also, in supporting the economic development of the area, we need to boost our career and employment resources in the library to continue to assist people with their search for a job, from helping them develop their resumes to how to interview for a job, to where to go for a job, and if they wish to improve themselves, to explore other alternate careers, we have resources, and we should demonstrate that those resources can help them to find an alternate career. The consultants also felt that we need to promote the library's role to attract businesses within the city. And by doing this, something as simple as when Matt Anderson goes out to a company to encourage them to come to the area, the library is a very important part of this. We have resources to offer businesses. We have resources to offer their families and educational opportunities for their families. We should develop brochures that Matt can give out and other people in economic development can give out to businesses so they know what they have here as a resource in the city. Libraries as public places, the consultant said we should continue to support the place, the library, as a second place. By second place, I mean a place other than work and a place other than your home. Reallocating space resources branch by branch according to the demographic needs. We need to be a vibrant space and a space that people want to go to. You don't build a library and let the interior of that library just set the way that it is for the next 11 to 12 years. We need to innovate, reorganize that space to meet the needs of the people. Marketing the library as a second place. A lot of people come to the library during the day because they're at home every day and they want a second place to go to meet other people, to read, to just get out of the house. Also, we have people that telecommute from home during the week. Well, Wednesdays with early out school days, it's not a great place to work once the kids are at home running around the house. The library becomes that second place that they can come to work for the rest of the day. Things like this, the consultants said we need to market and we need to strive. Outreach to underserved populations. The consultants felt that we need to evaluate our services by using that market segmentation data so that we locate those pockets of the citizens in the city that we're not serving. And not only reaching out to ethnic and underserved communities within the Des Moines area, but also those pockets of populations in the city that due to a natural barrier or perceived barrier, they just don't come out of that area of the city to utilize library resources. We need to locate those people and be able to find a way to give them the library resources and services that we offer to the rest of the community. The southeast part of the city is one of those areas. Advocacy and government relations is something that the consultants felt that we need to press on to promote the contributions that the library makes to education, economic development, community building, and revitalization. Libraries play an important part, but libraries play a transparent part that not is always known to the citizenry and also elected officials, both on this level as well as the state level or the county level. We need to showcase things such as the favorable return on investment. Studies from Texas, New Hampshire, Illinois have been made that show that every dollar that you put into library services benefits the community that it serves by $5 or $6 worth of value in services, in advancement, and in resources. Staff training and development was an area that we, of course, want to look at, and the consultants said we should continue to look at, to commit to staff training, and to continue to strive for that succession plan. We need to start training those people that will replace us when I become a retired citizen. And enhance internal relations. The consultant said that at this point, something that was assumed, the working relations between the library board, the foundation, and the different friends groups, is something that should be more codified as well as always improved and enhanced. And this is one area that the library board will be looking toward in the future. So as a part of this whole process, the consultants also studied the different facilities that we had, studied the past construction of our facilities, and looked at the future demographics of our area, and came up with a master facilities plan, which they recommended to the library board. In this plan, the 4 points were that we compare favorably with peer libraries across the nation in the square footage space that we offer to the public. However, when looking at that space, for the amount of square footage per capita per area of the city, most of our libraries were adequate in the number of square feet that is offered to the public of that area. However, we were a little bit low on the north side and low on the south side for the number of square feet that we offer to the public. Also, the third point was that the existing south side library facility needs to be replaced. We need to start thinking about the fact that that building on the south side is only a 30 to 40-year-old building, and we are now surpassing the 40th year. It was not built for longevity, the same as a durable building like this was built. We need to look at seriously repairing that building or looking at an alternative other building. And also we must address the space needs, because we are an area within Iowa that is growing year by year, decade by decade, and we need to look at how we'll serve those citizens in the future. So let's go through each library facility and what the consultants found. In the central library, the consultant said we should reorganize the first floor to expand the children's service area. There are more and more children using the central library through the downtown school and other schools that come down to the central library, as well as a growing resident community within the downtown area. In keeping with that, we need to reorganize the entire layout of the central library on the interior to give better space organization, enhance user flow, so that people can more easily find their materials and we can effect very good customer service. In the East Side Library, the consultants found that in 5 or 6 years, we need to look at expanding the facility by about 650 square feet to enlarge the teen area and children's area. They felt that the east side of the city will be a very high growth area for these two demographics, and we should be ready for them. And also, the consultants said we should explore procuring or leasing additional parking surrounding the library, because during the summer months, it becomes quite congested when you have the softball fields going full tilt, you have the water park being utilized, and the library, especially when there's a program at the library some evening or a special event. It's very hard to find a parking spot. Forest Avenue Library, the consultants felt that we should consider expanding the facility for shared use with other city services. Right now we're sharing the meeting room with the Park and Recreation Department, but we should enhance that and enlarge that. And also we should look toward other departments such as the Des Moines Police Department by having an area in the library where they can have a desk area or do some sort of service. Also, the recommendation was to look at, in the future, possibly combining the Forest Avenue and Northside Library services into a newly constructed facility to serve both target groups. Franklin Avenue Library, the consultants felt we were doing just fine. When you build a new facility, it's like building a new house. You build a house, you move in, you think you know where the furniture should go. After living in that house for about a year, you start moving that sofa over a little bit, moving that chair over a little bit because it better suits your lifestyle. Well, the same thing is happening with the Franklin Avenue Library and happens with all libraries. You have the architect that designed the interiors and the exterior of the library. You move in, well, you find you need a little bit more lighting over here, and that table over there should be moved over a little bit. We're in the process of doing that right now, and the consultants felt we were doing just fine with the library. Northside Library, the consultants felt that we should adopt a policy of taking a realistic look at our demographics and noting that we have an increased number of seniors that are using that facility. So we should accommodate them by finding chairs that seniors can get out of and get into with ease. But at the same time, noting that we have a high number of Latino population families that come to use the facility, so we should keep the tables so that the family members can gather around those tables as well. So it's a balancing act of both types of demographics. And then again, the recommendation was to combine both Forest Avenue and Northside Library services into one newly constructed facility to serve both target groups. Southside Library had the most dynamic recommendations from the consultants. The first one was to construct a new 30,000 square foot facility comparable to the comparable to the Franklin Avenue Library, centrally located in the South Side service area. In the meantime, while we're designing the library, while we're finding the funding to commit to the construction of that library, we should temporarily lease a 5,000 to 10,000 square foot commercial storefront to effect temporary services in that area. And then at the time that the new library opens, that location will cease to exist. And finally, the recommendation from the consultants was to look at alternative forms of library service. This is what I fondly call the red box for libraries. This is an example of a 400 book of automated kiosk. The 3 shelves of books that you see, think of your dry cleaners. The books go round and round on a conveyor belt. What you do is you come up to it, you slide your library card, you push the button, the books go round and round until you find one that you like, you push the button again, and it checks the book out to you. You can also check books in to this kiosk. You can put a book on hold by going up to the computer, seeing if there's a book that the library owns. You put a hold on that book. It's delivered to this kiosk the next day. You come up to it, you search for the book, and it says, hey, you have it, here it is, and it checks out to you. You can also interact with the librarian through the 2 computer screens for face-to-face interactive communication through Skype, so that you can ask your questions, and the librarian can show you on the internet where your answers may be, and you can print off things from this kiosk. For a $290,000 investment, this is a very slick alternative to those areas of the city that we don't have the wherewithal, or we don't yet see that we should build a brick and mortar facility. So at this time, I would like to ask Julie Thorson to come up and say a few words, and then we'll answer any questions or take any comments that you have.
Good morning. Thank you. On behalf of my fellow trustees, I want to thank you for letting us be here. We are so pleased with the results of this study. It has highlighted some things that we were suspecting for a while. It reinforced some things that we were pretty sure we knew, and it also brought forward some things that caught us by surprise. Frankly, we were shocked sometimes when we read some comments, and we sent you a great deal of material to read at night when you have nothing else to do, to lay down and read our material. But there were some comments in there where we had folks who said, the library is so terribly important to those people, but I go to X bookstore, Amazon. Those are the kinds of things that we saw and immediately went, wow, people don't realize what we can do for them and who all we can care for. And so it was that kind of information that was new to us. So this study for us was enlightening. New things, reinforcement, validation, and we're interested very much in what you think when you go through it. What you find new, what you find interesting, what you find important, what you say, wow, guys, we hadn't noticed. Let's pay more attention to this. So it's important to us that we hear what you think, and we know we've given you a lot of material to read, so we don't expect to hear from you tomorrow. But we do want you to kind of chew through it and then have us back to answer questions if that would be helpful. Anything that we can do to provide more information as we then start planning for the future and thinking what our next steps are as we make our decisions in managing the library. Is there anything I can answer for you this morning? Yes.
Christine,
Julie, do you have, what's the timeline and how is the library board going to develop a plan and implement the plan? And obviously, I saw dollar signs on
Absolutely.
a lot of this, so I'd be curious as to what your thoughts are.
Well, we've asked staff to do some examination for us and to really try and prioritize out of those 12 big areas and try and start putting a timeline together for us. So we haven't seen that yet, but they're in the process of doing that for us. Because there definitely are dollars there. Okay. We have shared this with the foundation board for the same reason and asked for their input and their advice because there are dollar signs there too, which have an implication for them.
The one thing that surprised me most was when you were talking about, when Greg was talking about regional, and the one piece of regional that you referred to, Greg, was on the summer programs. Mm-hmm. I was hoping that there might be more significance on the regional aspect, and when I say significance, overall administration of the libraries.
I think as you read through the detail, you'll see hints of that.
Okay.
You know, I'll brag for him because he doesn't brag very much, but the state library director is retiring and Greg is on the committee to help select the new state librarian. He has built such a relationship at the state level that he is being asked to play those kind of roles, and we're very proud of him for that. And he's playing the same kind of role at Polk County. And so we're hopeful privately that with Greg's relationships that he is building within the county, that we can start finding ways to do some sharing of services without that being threatening to folks.
Okay.
You know, with it being helpful, but libraries are a very precious thing to people, very ownership driven for a community. And so we have to be really take careful steps.
Understand. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else?
Anybody have anything else?
I'm just pleased to see in the study that we have a high quality of customer service. Anybody who uses libraries understands this, and I think that our staff need to know they've been recognized for this. I also appreciate the fact of the amount of neighborhood meetings that are being held in the meeting rooms at the libraries. I think that's extremely important, and I think the word is starting to spread, so we'll see more of them. And multi-use of the facilities is good.
Thank you. We appreciate that. We try very hard. Thanks for the compliment to our staff.
Julie, thank you.
Thank you.
Greg, thank you. And to the board, appreciate your work.
Thank you very much.
All right, let's move on to the City of Des Moines streetscape update. Mr. Manager.
Mr. Mayor, council members, we have presentations from CD staff. Kyle Larson, are you going to? This is an update on the various streetscape projects that are in the queue right now. We're going to talk about several of them, but particularly Beaverdale and Roosevelt Cultural. So with that, Kyle.
Good morning. Rick asked me to come this morning to give you an update on the active neighborhood streetscape projects that we have going on around town. On your agenda tonight is the approval of the Roosevelt Cultural District concept plan, so I'll talk more about that later on in the presentation, but I wanted to first give you an overview of the projects that are active right now that have had activity in the past year or will have activity in the coming year. The first is Beaver Avenue. The Schmid petition process is ongoing right now. The Schmid petitions were sent out last week to the property owners within the district. We're hoping to have signed petitions back by the end of the month so that you can see that and we can move through the approval process, taking that to Plan and Zoning Commission and then back to you for public hearing. We're anticipating that the final plans for the project will go to DOT for review in November, and then the project, as long as council approval sees fit, will go out for bid letting in February of 2014, and then we could construct the project starting next May. The next project that I wanted to touch on is Highland Park. Highland Park, the Euclid Avenue corridor will be seeing some traffic safety improvements coming next year. We plan to piggyback on top of that project with some fairly minimal streetscape enhancements, but to carry on kind of the feel of the district eastward in front of Park Fair Mall. We can do that with pretty minimal costs because of the traffic safety project is taking on the bulk of the expenses there, so we could see those enhancements being installed late 2014 or early 2015. The next project is the 6th Avenue corridor. If you recall, we got some funding through the EPA to do a Greening America's Capitals project, and we had a consultant team come in back in February to do a design charrette to look at some green sustainable elements for the corridor. He had approved a streetscape concept plan back in November. The GAC effort kind of piggybacked on top of that to look how we can add in those sustainable elements. We're expecting the final report from the consultant on that coming this fall. Lastly is the Ingersoll Avenue project. They just completed an expansion of their Schmidt district to include some of the Grand Avenue corridor as well, and that was approved by you all back in January. Now I'm going to dive into Roosevelt. This is a project we've been working on for the last year or so. We had a series of steering committee meetings through the process, a public meeting at the front end and the back end. I had a number of individual sit-downs with property owners and business owners in the district to really get their specific individual input on the project, really strengthen the plan. I think we got a lot of buy-in through that process too that will carry us on through implementation of the project. We also have a number of other stakeholders in the area, Des Moines Public Schools, DART, and Des Moines Playhouse that we also had a number of meetings with. Here's kind of an overview of the design process. We're completing the master plan or concept plan report right now. Obviously going forward we'll have to look at funding options as well as final design and construction of the project. Some of the overall goals for the district are to improve the pedestrian vehicle safety, bring in some branding for the Roosevelt Cultural District, build that brand, and develop some wayfinding signage so that patrons can better navigate the district. Looking at undergrounding overhead utilities and incorporating a storm sewer system upgrades to eliminate some of the combined sewer system that we have in this area. The group wants to incorporate some art into the corridor if possible, and also looking at partnerships with DART. This is on their Route 60, so bringing in some of that BRT infrastructure as necessary. We looked at all those opportunities here, as well as bringing in green space that we do with all of our streetscape projects. Some of the bigger elements that have been proposed in the plan are reducing the lanes from 4 to 3 through the corridor. Again, enhancing the pedestrian and vehicle safety through the corridor was a top priority. Improving the lighting, I mentioned the undergrounding of the utilities, stormwater, public art, and then also the bicycle and pedestrian elements. Lighting, as you all know, Mid-American Energy is looking at an LED option, so that's something that we're hopeful will come to fruition and we can incorporate into this project to bring some of the better lighting photometrics to the area and make it safer. Undergrounding utilities, because of the storm sewer project, the alignment of that is on the west side of 42nd Street. You can kind of see the blue line there if you look closely. Because the two projects both reside on the west side of 42nd Street, there's some opportunities to do the storm sewer upgrades, but also at the same time underground the utilities that are there overhead, because Mid-American's going to have to come in and temporarily move those facilities anyway, so we see that as an opportunity here for the district. The storm sewer alignments will jog west down Chamberlain and then back north up into Waveland Park and make its connection on the south end near 235. But we foresee that 42nd Street will remain open through the duration of the streetscape, or excuse me, the stormwater, the storm sewer implementation. This is part of the combined sewer separation plan that the city has with the EPA and DNR. Here's an example of some of the public art elements that could be brought into the district, both standalone vertical elements as well as elements in the pavement or special pavers or something of that like. mentioned the special pavers. They can also be incorporated as enhanced crosswalks, again, to improve the safety, pedestrian safety crossing 42nd Street. There is a number of Roosevelt High School students as well as just district patrons that cross there going shop to shop. So we see that as a big improvement for the district. Landscaping. The steering committee is very cognizant of the fact that it's very important to have low maintenance landscaping so that you're not spending a great deal of money year in and year out maintaining those elements. So that's something that the design team has taken a strong look at, how we can bring in the green elements but make sure that they're low maintenance and cost effective to install. Pedestrian and bicycle amenities, we're really just looking to branch out and make connections where possible to the good system that we have in place here within the northwest side of Des Moines. Also making connections to the adjoining neighborhoods, Waveland Park, Drake, Waterbury to the south. Broken the district out into kind of 4 different segments so that we can look at some of the elements of each segment a little bit closer. So we'll start at the north at the Crocker intersection here. As part of the project, we did a traffic study to count both vehicle and pedestrian traffic. One of the big recommendations that came out of that traffic study was the installation of a traffic signal here at Crocker. Both the Crocker and Chamberlain intersections were rated at a level of service F, so they were both in dire need of improvement. So this traffic signal installation here will greatly improve those conditions in the morning and afternoon peak hours. We also see this as the north gateway to the district, so there's an opportunity here to have some sort of gateway into the Roosevelt Cultural District as you're coming down from the north. The next section is Chamberlain. This is kind of that transition from the school use into the shops from the west. So we have opportunities here to install some of those pedestrian crosswalk safety features that I mentioned. As part of the traffic study, though, we identified the need for Chamberlain to be a one-way going eastbound. You can see kind of that in the graphic here. By doing so, we gained some real estate for both pedestrian amenities and for angled parking on the north side of Chamberlain there. You can see that that adds a few stalls for the shops, so they were receptive to that. It also adds some real estate for potential plaza space or small gathering space there, the northwest corner of 42nd and Chamberlain. Moving south down to the central area, out in front of the shops. Another thing that came out of the traffic study was an opportunity to flip the parking in front of the shops so that the traffic will now enter in the north entrance drive instead of the south entrance drive off of Rollins. So we'll have the angled parking moving away from the shops to facing 42nd Street. That improves the safety for the patrons there in front of the shops, and really adds some opportunities for green space as well. A big thing here is that lane reduction from 4 to 3, so we add some real estate to incorporate some of the sidewalk that isn't existing right now in front of the shops, as well as opportunities for street trees and other landscaping in front of the shops. Finally, the south segment, south of Rollins here, in front of the Des Moines Playhouse and Hubble School. We have opportunity, again, as a south gateway into the district, adding some monuments or gateway markers. You can see those in their graphic here. We also, through our conversations with the Des Moines Playhouse, talked about some of their planned improvements that they have going on. You're probably all familiar with them starting their work right now in phase 1 of their remodeling effort. As part of that, we've looked at some of the traffic circulation on their site. A lot of school drop-off and pickup occurs actually on their property. So we've talked through how to better kind kind of navigate the pedestrian movements, those kids going to school. Right now, those kids are crossing at Center, right at the off-ramp to 235. There's a crosswalk there, getting them over to Hubble. There's a lot of right turn movements there off of 235, so it's somewhat of a treacherous cross for the students to make. There's a crossing guard there, but we have an opportunity to move that crossing traffic up to Rollins and have that a little bit better controlled, a little bit safer away from 235. We've talked to Bill Good at Des Moines Public Schools about that. They're very receptive of that, so we have that opportunity here. We also have talked to DART, as I mentioned, and DART has a stop proposed here in front of the Playhouse. It would be a pull-off stop to get them out of that traffic through lane, and then there's a fair amount of real estate there for an enhanced shelter or some infrastructure that they may need to install as part of the BRT. Here's just some of the renderings out of the plan so you can kind of see what the project could look like. Here's the top view is looking as you're entering the district from the south. You can see some of the street trees as well as those monument markers that are proposed in the plan. The architectural cues from those markers really come from Roosevelt High School and some of the other homes within the Drake and Waveland Park area. That was something that was very near and dear to the committee, to really make sure that the look and feel and aesthetic of the improvements matched the neighborhood. Again, bringing in that brand with some of the banners and that we have the opportunity to mount on the improved streetlights. And then here's kind of a bird's eye view of what the corridor could look like with the street trees and other green elements installed. You can see the continuity of the sidewalk on the east side of 42nd Street that isn't existing today. The project costs are estimated at $1.7 million. If we follow the city streetscape guidelines, the breakout of those costs, you can see here. Public share, city share would be $982,300, roughly 58% of the project costs, and then the private match would be $714,000, roughly 42% of the project costs.
Brian, the 42% there, that includes the burying of the utilities, correct?
That's right.
So if the utilities were not buried, what would the amount be?
It would be probably around $450,000. I think that's about a $250,000 item, the burial of the overhead, just that alone. But in the guidelines, that's something that's identified as 100% obligation for private fundraising. The city share is subject to available funding in future CIP years. We're not looking for a committal of funding at this time, pending the upcoming budget discussions. The private fundraising effort has begun, though. The RCD has formed a fundraising committee and has actively started to go out and ask for donations, as well as look to put in grant applications where they can. There are a number of opportunities for grants, both on the public side and private side, that we'll pursue. The MPO funding that we look to is a common one, as well as on the private side, the Prairie Meadows Community Betterment Grants. Pending tonight's approval, the next steps would be to look at funding availability and pursue it as necessary. There would be future council actions for proceeding with the project in terms of getting further consultant services for final design and construction. We've looked at some preliminary SHMID figures for the district, so we'd have to go through that process as well. And then we have the school and Playhouse are both tax exempt, so we'd have to have some discussions with them to see if they would like to participate in that ongoing maintenance piece of the project as well. We really couldn't have done it without a really fine group of volunteers behind us. We have 5 from the steering committee here today, so I'd like to thank all of them. Sheena Thomas, Chris Arns, Susan Nolan, Bob Gurnis, and Jen Sayers are all here this morning. So thank all of the committee members that participated. And then the design team, Jim Harbaugh from Bolton and Macon is here as well. And then we had a number of city staff working on the project. And I mentioned our other partners, and Bill Good and Jim Tisham from the school district and from DART. And then we also had Jessica Rowe come in kind of later in the game to talk about some of the art opportunities that exist throughout the corridor. So that concludes my presentation. I'll open it up to any questions or comments you might have.
Any questions? Anybody?
I just make a comment. The volunteers and staff have really done a great job on this, and they're really energized and working hard to bring it over the finish line, and we want to keep that momentum going. So I know that I'm confident that we'll be able to raise the private dollars, and just want to make sure that we keep it going and so we stay on track. Because I know once you have a project like this and there's been so much time, effort, and energy, you want to see it come to completion, and that's important.
I've got a couple questions.
Sure.
I have, I think, attended most of the design presentations that have been held at Roosevelt, and listened a lot to the comments, and questions that come to my mind are kind of as follows. First of all, I like the idea, and certainly I think it really moves to energize the whole area, and certainly everybody has participated and worked really hard on this. The Chamberlain switch to a one-way there at that corner sort of runs against an awful lot of the work that we've been doing in and around the whole downtown area in terms of how you make things more accessible. And as you look at people coming down Chamberlain, they can't get into the Roosevelt shopping center. It doesn't look like. It looks like the traffic is directed coming down Chamberlain heading east to the south. Then as we look at that whole concept of reversing the traffic going into the shopping center, and so everybody drives by the shopping center, turns around, comes back, I guess, if they're coming from the south, and then they've got to cut across the other lane coming the other way. And then as you get down to Rollins, you've got traffic. It's coming around the newly remodeled, redesigned, reconfigured Playhouse, and that traffic is headed north, and then it all runs into each other at Rollins. Because now we've reversed the traffic, so people going around the Playhouse, I guess, have got to take a left?
Right. Rollins is one-way eastbound, so as you're coming, if you can't find a spot in front of the shops there, you'd have to turn east on Rollins. But the benefit of that is it directs traffic back to the parking lot that's behind the shops. Right
Okay,
now.
so everybody that goes through the shopping center has to take a left and go east?
Right.
I see that as a problem. And I see it as a problem as it comes around the other way as well. I don't quite understand the pedestrian-friendly, user-friendly concept. I think it's going to create more of a bottleneck there, especially from users. Drive-byers, you know, maybe it's going to work well, but you've got both north and south traffic, the south traffic headed through the shopping center, which is on the, so now you've got people that are trying to get back into the shopping center, having to cross over a line of traffic that's headed north to get into the shopping center. And when they get back to the bottom of that, they've got to turn left and then I guess go all the way around everything and end up back on, if they want to get back on the freeway or head back south, they have to go up to Crocker and
On
come back
41st.
around. So you're going to direct all that traffic through the residential neighborhood. I think we ought to be doing some more discussing about some of that stuff, because I think it's going to really complicate things for
Rollins
people
is,
that are
Rollins is
using it.
one way today, so we're not proposing to change the configuration of Rollins itself.
No, but you've got the traffic going to the shopping center now that's headed north and get right back out on 42nd Street.
Right. Most of those patrons are going to find a parking space in the back, though, and that there is a large lot back there that a lot of folks don't know about. So utilizing that lot is something that the business owners see as a positive.
Kyle, that parking lot in front, what is that, like 15 spaces maybe?
I think
Maybe.
it's probably in that
So
range, yeah.
I'm not sure we're talking a significant amount of traffic change. The Playhouse traffic has to go out that same direction anyhow, so you're only
Right, so
talking.
you're putting everything back right into the residential neighborhood. You're not
But that's
putting
the
it
way
back
it
out on the
is
street.
currently.
I know, so that they need to fix that.
Okay.
Was Mike Simonson included in your process?
Very much so. He's been involved in all the discussions, and there's been a lot of, he's very supportive. Yeah.
In terms of the one-way of Chamberlain, making a left turn there, if we were to have it two-way, would wreck all of the traffic modeling and traffic needs that we have. On 42nd Street, it does carry 8,000 to 9,000 cars a day, so it's a pretty well-traveled area, especially in the morning and afternoon peak hours. If someone was waiting there to turn left on Chamberlain, it would really it would back up the district. So
Well, they can't take a left on Chamberlain now anyway, can they?
No, they can't. But left turns northbound too, out of Chamberlain, northbound on 42nd Street will be eliminated here too. So eliminating that movement will help the district as well. So, but having that traffic signal there, focusing the traffic on Crocker that's going east and west from the neighborhoods is what the traffic study suggested that we do. And then along with maintaining Rollins and Chamberlain as one way.
Mr. Manager?
Just a suggestion. The mayor's comments have been brought up sort of early in the process here. I know you've spent a lot of time on the plan, but it seems to me what we ought to do is sort of take a look at the issues the mayor has raised here and respond back to the council and the committee. Certainly, I think these are all questions that need to be resolved, and we all need to be kind of comfortable with the plan going forward. So I'm not sure exactly what the right answer is, but I think we need to look at these things a little bit, and maybe we just ought to take a little bit of time to do that before we sort of put the final stamp of approval on the plan.
And I don't know, that, Mr. Manager, that we need to hold the process up. I think we need to
Correct.
just keep working on it. I mean, we could vote on this thing tonight, make sure everything keeps moving forward.
I appreciate, and that would be my thought too. Let's keep the process going, but let's take a look at the issues and just satisfy ourselves that we've got the right plan before we.
If adjustments need to be made with the plan, there's always the final design process to do that, to really nail down any of those changes that need to happen.
Right.
Okay, any other questions, anybody?
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
And thanks to everybody out there for coming.
Let's go ahead and move on and get an update. And I see it's now 12:30. And so let's get an update on the City Development Office, Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. One of the goals that the council established for me back in February of this year as part of my performance review was to look at a number of goals. One of those goals had to do with the establishment of a city development office. There are really compelling reasons why a city development office is necessary, and actually, if you think about it, our capital resources as a city are constantly challenged through your capital budgeting process. The needs that we have as a city for basic infrastructure improvements like streets and bridges and municipal buildings is great. We're stretched to the limit to meet those needs. So when you start talking about capital resources for what we might call quality of life projects, it is becoming increasingly difficult to fund those. We talked about a couple areas this morning already, libraries and streetscapes, that might fall into that category of the kind of projects that as a city are going to be necessary for our future, but are going to become increasingly difficult for us to do. So one of the things that we've been thinking about and is reflected in the goals is this idea of a city development office. If you look at, just by way of example, higher education institutions, universities and colleges, they have been remarkably successful in this country about establishing ways to raise funds to support their programs. It's stunning to me the kind of money that universities have been able to raise in their endowments to support their programs. But when you look at cities, you see some success. We have actually a very effective library foundation. There's sort of a beginning parks foundation, but beyond that, there's really not a concerted program that cities in this country have really taken on. So this idea would be to establish a sort of a city development office that would be charged with the responsibility of going out and trying to solicit funds on an ongoing basis, and frankly at numbers larger than we've done in the past to support some of the quality of life initiatives for our city. And as you think about it, it's not just one or two things that we could fund with this. There's a whole range of kind of projects that we have as a city that are going to be necessary. I just made a list: park and recreation projects, economic development, neighborhood improvements, police improvements, fire, housing and homeless issues, cemeteries. These are all areas, and there are others I didn't list, that you are constantly asked to help out funding. But as I say, it's becoming increasingly difficult. We had this notion, for example, that you might even establish sort of a catalog of projects that this council has identified as important projects for the council or for the city to take on, and the catalog could be sort of the basis for a fundraising initiative. So we've given a lot of thought to this and about how we might put it together. It is a little bit charting new territory. I can't find great examples around the country where this has been implemented in a way that we're talking about. So we have to kind of tread lightly here and be very thoughtful about how we set it up. But there are at least two key steps that have to take place. One is to be very clear about the legal, financial, and organizational structure that would have to be set up. I've talked some with Jeff Lester, our city attorney, and Jeff has volunteered his services to help sort of set that out in a way that's both legal and transparent, which I think is vitally important. One of the things that we thought about in terms of the fiscal agent would be the use of the community foundation. That's sort of their stock and trade. They're very good at it. People are comfortable with that entity as a place to deposit funds. And of course, they have the tax exempt status that they can assure the donor. So step number one, clearly establish the legal, financial, and organizational structure that we're going to operate this under. Step number two is really the retention of a qualified, experienced development officer. Now, there's a skill set here that goes with this. It's not just your best friend down the street. It's somebody who has the skills necessary to manage and operate and implement and carry out a fundraising program. It doesn't happen overnight. It takes time to establish the leads and the protocols necessary to do it. But there is a skill set there. And there are people that do that and do it very well. My thought is that we would select this through an RFP process. The RFP would identify potential candidates for that kind of a job. This would obviously have to be approved by City Council and come back to this table for your review for that purposes. I would say that as you think about it, that it's the kind of effort that really requires a funding commitment of at least 3 years. It just takes that long, at least that's my notion, to have this kind of a program up and running and be successful. You can't do it overnight. You can't be successful in the short term. So I think we should be thinking about at least a 3-year commitment to do this, to get the person on board, establish the procedures and protocols, get the database established, reach out to potential donors, develop the protocols around which you would lead to success down the road. So it's, I think, a really interesting idea, something that might help the city very much going into the future in taking on those kind of projects that frankly have made Des Moines one of the best cities in the country. We constantly get accolades, and one of the reasons we get those accolades, I think, is because you have been remarkably successful at taking on quality of life projects in this community, and that's what gives us, I think, the features and a lot of the attributes that give us high marks in the national media. So, Mayor and Council, that's my status report. The next step would be to bring this back to you, probably in the form of asking for your review and approval of a contract for services with somebody that could help chart the road down the way. I'd be happy to answer any questions or take any suggestions that you might have.
Christine?
It's my understanding, if I recall correctly, that this was part of the budget that we approved, that we would go, this was incorporated into
Yes.
the budget. So I just want to make sure that we're clear on that.
Yes.
And the other, I know that there had been some discussions about whether it was going to be staff or contractual. And I think going out with an RFP and being on a contractual basis, that gives us the 3-year time period to really do it on a pilot basis. And then a decision can be made long-term, for the long
Yes.
term, if that has been a successful venture on our part and it's something that we want to look at adding on a permanent basis.
That's exactly correct. It just doesn't seem to me that this is the kind of thing right now that ought to be made a city employee. I think the contract approach gives you more flexibility. And frankly, in the short term, I think it's going to be cheaper to utilize a contract arrangement as opposed to an in-house employee.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, I think this is a great idea. And I think we've had some of those discussions as we passed the last budget. And I'm in agreement that I think contracting it out in the short term, maybe even the long term, works well. But I'd like to see some benchmarks of kind of what we have in mind. And I realize that goes into the RFP process. But what we're looking for in the next 3 years in terms of qualifications of who it is we're hiring, what we want them to accomplish. Do we want certain fundraising numbers? Do we want, a protocol, a procedure to be in place? Do we just want to build up a donor list and kind of figure out because you're right, I think it takes time, but it takes more time if we don't have kind of the parameter set of what we're expecting going in.
Mr. Grease, Mr. Mayor, if I could just, one of the things, I think that those are all great comments, and one of the things that occurs to me that's really important about setting this up is that I think the council for the long term needs to sort of retain the ability to set the priorities for this effort. You don't want to, if you really want something that's going to help your long-term financial situation, that's going to supplement your efforts, you can't set up a system that basically discharges that responsibility outside the city council. It's got to be something that you embrace, that you identify what the priorities are, so that those priorities and projects and programs that you take on with this supplement what the city's trying to do. Otherwise, you end up with a system that may have great projects, but if they're not part of, frankly, your public agenda, then the financial benefit is going to be less. So I think it's imperative in my mind that the council and the mayor retain the ability to set the priorities for this effort. And as part of that, the idea of benchmarks is perfectly appropriate and should be embedded in any kind of a contract that we enter into.
Bob?
Well, I think it's a great idea, but it doesn't happen overnight. You got to create relationships, and hopefully throughout the process we can get some updates periodically as what's been accomplished, that we're not just sliding along and all of a sudden say that this is good or it isn't good. But we don't want to be a failure at this, but we got to make sure we get the progress reports.
Mr. Manager, do you anticipate in terms of a position or an ask in this RFP a certain level of fundraising or whatever you would want to call it that is acceptable to do some of this stuff we're talking about? Are we talking about 2 million, 5 million, 50 million, 100 million? What are we talking about?
You know, Mayor, your comments and feelings about that are would be really relevant here. I think we've got to set our sights for a fundraising goal. However, that's more than a few $100,000. I think you've already got programs that do that now. I really think, and I don't have any science necessarily to back it up, and your input on this would be great, but I think you've got to be talking about a program that's got the capability of generating at least $10 million that you would have available, that you could commit to various projects over the long term, and perhaps more than that. But if it's not going to have that kind of fund capacity to it, then it's really not worthwhile. So I think we have to set our sights fairly high. I think it needs to be driven by the priorities that you want to take on, and that's probably where the number comes from. But I think if it's not at least in the range of $10 million or north of that, then I think we're not really going to accomplish much, to be honest with you.
That'll be interesting to see who pops up that wants to do that. And I'm assuming that you're going to give them some sort of a set number, or are you going to pay them a commission on the?
No commission.
No,
No.
Mr. Mayor, this would not be a
Well, the question
commission.
is, who wants to do it then?
Well, there'd be a,
There'd be a large group,
From the private sector?
yeah. There are several consultants out there that have done some highly successful campaigns. The Symphony just completed one that far exceeded their original goal, and I would see that person being a possibility.
Well, but we're talking about two different concepts, Mrs. Hensley. What the concept of going out and raising money for purpose specific, whether it be a building or the symphony or a street or whatever it would be, or a baseball park or a river walk, is a different concept than going out and say, give us much money so we can do something. I mean, unless you design it to be project specific, it's sort of a throwing money at some.
I think, Mr. Mayor, I think the
nebulous-
idea, I mentioned in my preliminary comments the idea of sort of a catalog, so that there would be projects that you would identify that maybe arise out of your capital budget discussions, and so maybe there's 10 projects in there, and people are able to donate to the kind of project that they want. So it wouldn't be.
Are you talking about naming rights then? Are you talking about, what are we talking about?
I think that could be part of it, or not.
You know, when you go to the community foundation, for example, we went to the community foundation and asked for assistance with the relocation of residents from the Randolph. They've got a whole group of individuals that have made contributions on their behalf to the community foundation, so that when we went there, they knew exactly who would be likely candidates that they could tap into their funds. And I see what you're talking about, city manager, as being very similar, that there would be a pool of different opportunities for future donors to say, I have a strong passion for parks, and I want to have my dollars that would be restricted or designated for parks. Or you may have the landscaping opportunities that we've got here, where people, you know, I'm thinking, just to use Roosevelt for example, ride carts would be perfect. You know, so I think that there would be lots of different opportunities and ways for people to participate.
I think so, but I think you also ought to be prepared for some mid-course correction as you go along. You know, we've not done this before. You know, we're going to be trying to figure out protocols that work. But it just seems to me that there is a potential there to bring some dollars to the table that you don't have today. And that's, to me, the prize behind it. How you do it, the actual protocols and goals that get established, you know, we're going to need to be a little bit open and flexible. Somebody really smart said to me, if you make a 3-year commitment, which I think is necessary to go into it with at least a 3-year commitment and beyond if it's successful, but at the same time, you know, you want to make sure that, gee, after 2 years, if it's not meeting any expectation of yours, you want to be able to cut the strings and say, well, we tried and it didn't work. I don't think that'll happen, but you ought to be prepared for that in the event that it does. So a 3-year commitment is where you need to start, but certainly you're going to have to be open and flexible to tailoring the exact approach to bring the most positive effect to the city. Naming rights may very well be part of it, or not, depends on how things evolve with it.
All right, any other questions? All right, thank you all. Let's open it up for the general public. Any questions from the general public? Seeing none, let's adjourn this meeting, and we'll see you all tonight who are so inclined or interested. at the city council meeting.